this next couple of abnormalities, well, one of them was quite messy and the other was quite messed up. The latter requiring a little more research than usual. Next we have the Mountain of Smiling Bodies. Yes, it's time for Gebura to deal with the monster made from corpses that the employees in the facility didn't bother to clear up. Some of them, like thee, were fans of the works of Studio Ghibli, considering that this abnormality resembles something from Spirited Away. In the facility, when it's ate enough, it would grow stronger and harder to kill, requiring K-Corp execution bullets to minimize this. In the library, it will devour its minions, the melted corpses, to do this. Each stage will need to be defeated, in both cases, in order to truly suppress it. Basically, stage 3 will need to be defeated to bring it down to stage 2. Stage 2 will need to be defeated in order to bring it down to stage 1. And after that's defeated, it's suppressed. Oh, and those that believe that this is a Michael Jackson tribute act will be deeply disappointed, as the corpses here are in nowhere near as good condition. This abnormality has a limited vocabulary. It can communicate with grunts and other noises, while also speaking in a halting way, while feeling pain, hunger, and a desire to satiate it. At stage 1, it desires to grow bigger and eat more. At stage 2, it just screams. At stage 3, it still wants to eat. When it divides, due to a part of it being destroyed, it desires to restore what was lost, knowing that it isn't great. Well, it's not a good thing for that abnormality, as it means that they're weaker overall. As for Gebura, she understands that it should be taken down as quickly as possible, and when it's defeated, understands that all that's left is a pile of dead bodies, as it was before it became an abnormality. Her assistants see the stage of the Mountain of Smiling Bodies as a place reeking of filth, much like a red light district, except without the vice or the perverts, knowing that it'll be hell to deal with if it grows bigger, and understood why they needed to deal with it fast. They saw it as a big lump upon killing it, disgusted by it, not understanding the smile. The Mountain of Smiling Bodies stage looks like a decrepit, blood-smeared hallway from Lobotomy Corporation. The containment unit door was opened and the dead were disfigured, and it was clear that they died in terrible agony. This is basically what it would look like without the perception filter. The same technology used to prevent those looking around going insane. Well, at least the manager, who was Ayan, although that's probably the least of his worries during that time. After taking down all of that abnormality, Gebura was visited by Roland, we catch them in the middle of a conversation, where Roland questioned if she's not as powerful as she was as the Red Mist in her prime. Basically, an in-universe explanation as to why she's not as strong as she used to be. As Kali, when she fought to the death against Garion, Arbiter of the Head, along with 2 claws and a number of abnormalities in the way. And also, all of the employees in the facility during her meltdown, where she used a variety of EGO weapons to try and tear down the facility. Gebura agreed with this. In fact, she doesn't see herself as Kali. Roland asked what the difference between the Red Mist and Gebura was. Well, according to Gebura, as the Red Mist, she could freely use the power of EGO, where it took the most powerful force in the city to fight her to a draw. And she was missing an arm at the time. That's how much of a bad she was. She was probably the only one that could do that in the city. Yeah, wielding weapons and armor resonating with your own hearts, beyond the imagination of even the most unhinged of Trez Association fixers. It would make a few of them unable to contain their arousal. How? That depends on their gender or if they've had full body replacements, or at least enough of their body replaced to render that area inaccessible. As Gebura, she couldn't handle the power of EGO so smoothly. Roland observed that the librarians could use EGO now. Gebura confirmed that they can, but they aren't in full control over what they use, and even then, that's temporary, gained from abnormalities. Yeah, which is an in-universe explanation to why, well, how EGO pages work. Roland understood it as, well, as this. They're borrowing the power from abnormalities in the form of EGO. Gebura confirmed this as, well, they're not in the state to use them properly. Roland asked if the Red Mist was. Gebura went on to explain that the sword was extracted from someone else. Well, it resembled the mimicry from the Nothing There abnormality, which used to be a human called Christopher, who, not recognizing his family in that deformed state, devoured them. Although she didn't say that to Roland. As for her armor, that EGO was truly hers. I wonder what kind of weapon EGO she'd manifest. Then again, not all abnormalities have both a weapon and armor. Her armor was a more bad-looking coat. Regardless, they empowered her greatly. She develops a reputation which Roland agreed none saw coming. Not even the blue reverberation, based on what we've heard. She believed that her foes were their pants, with how helpless at fighting her they were. Gebura tells him that not all convenient, as she needs to keep her mind under control, as the EGO links with her mind. So there's a risk of her getting consumed by that power if she doesn't maintain control of herself. Which, as Roland guessed, would lead to distortion if she is consumed by that power. Gebura believes so, as she felt like someone was talking to her every time she used EGO. It was something she needed to hear, but also what she didn't want to listen to. A raging torment that could wash away her conscious mind if she lost it. Roland didn't feel that, although he suspected that Angela was adjusting the EGO in advance, a safety buffer to prevent distortion. Gibura was more worried about random people manifesting and using EGO. And I can understand that, as it's dangerous enough with those that would behave responsibly with it, like Yujin, for example. But to allow someone like Argalia to use it, it would allow them to cause even more suffering and pain to others than they already know how to do. Then Roland asked who gave her access to such amazing gear. Gibura then answered simply, Carmen. Yeah. As Roland understood it, she was the one who led the research to cure humanity of the disease of the mind, which Gibura confirmed. She was from a nest, but was brave, or some might say suicidal enough to hang around the back streets to give her fervent speeches. A place where those within a nest would not go unless they either had business there or they had no other choice. Gibura had little confidence in her survival chances if she kept that up. And I couldn't really blame her. There are gangs that would kill her and harvest her organs, if she was lucky. If she was unlucky, they'd probably eat her alive, literally. Gibura was asked by Roland if she helped Carmen out of pity. No. Carly was good at what she did. And considering that she was good at what she did, of course she wouldn't do it for free. She asked Carmen what a nest dweller would know about the agonies of the city to be so passionate about that matter. This was someone that actually meant what they said, unlike most others. She told her that she wanted to break the ever-repeating cycle of suffering within the city. This angered Kali, as this resulted in her snapping at Carmen and shouting, "How dare you rattle on about that? What do you know about the pain and suffering people in the backstreets go through?" Well, she'd know about that better than most, as Backstreet 23 is the worst. As in Cannibal Central. This didn't break Carmen, as she retorted with a question, "What do you know about the pain in the nest, then?" Carmen wanted to know about the pain in the backstreets, while she'd tell Kali about the pain in the nests. Quite shameless, wasn't it? And also quite brash for one so physically weak. Although she had a certain energy. She said that even the weakest people could gain the power to easily topple the head if they set their minds to it. Ooh, now that's a huge risk to say in the open, as that could have resulted in some nasty visitors if someone had, well, Stasi'd her. They'd even call it treason. She'd even give everyone the therapy to grant such power and mindsets. Yeah, now that's quite reckless, as a few of those that would be granted this power might be murderous psychopaths that just want everything to burn. Oh wait, never mind. We already know such a psychopath, don't we? After that, Carmen gave Callie her business card, telling her to come over if she was interested. In the end, she was interested. And this was when she was grade 2. 2 steps below she would eventually get to. Roland questioned why she bought into her borderline cultist hooey, as he put it, despite being a grade 2. Well, I don't think we can argue about the end result, as it didn't trash her career, as it's part of what made her the Red Mist. Carly believed her because she was that experienced. She's met a number of fake people, a lot of swindlers, hacks, and other thieves that need the permission of their victims to rob them. But she understood that Carmen was not one of them. Roland asked, what kind of person was she? Gebura then went on to say that Kali could always count on Carmen, believing that protecting her could change the world, that fewer would suffer the pain that she did. It's why, as Roland said, she works for less than she normally would. All those unbelievable things, becoming a living legend, becoming a colour, well, Gebura saw those as just extras. Quite modest, isn't she? She considered the meaning of her work as enough for her. Roland considered her strong and stupidly honest. Yeah, Gebura got that a lot. Roland thanked her for the stories, and then she offered him a cigarette, otherwise known as a death stick. Roland declined politely as he still had some work to do, and so he left, until he needed to deliver more books to the floor of language. Next we have The Road Home and Scaredy Cat. These two first appeared in the Lobotomy Corporation comic Wonder Lab, which was set around Lobotomy Corporation branch 0-5681. This was a twisted take on Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme of the abnormalities that Chesed has to deal with. In that comic, one employee fed Scaredy Cat in the domestic cat form some cat food, while another showed the road home some animated film. Oh, so there is some kind of entertainment in the city made, or at least shown. These abnormalities were separate at that time, but their seemingly harmless appearance, like many abnormalities, was deceptive, as the road home was capable of attacking with golden road tiles. Yeah, the yellow bricks. And by dropping a house on employees. Okay, that sounds familiar, as I seem to remember a witch dying because of that. As for the Scaredy Cat, it sensed her breaching, and although it looked harmless before, like the road home, it turned into a blue-maned manticore because of this, and then breached its containment unit. And apparently this would happen if either the warm-hearted woodsman or the scarecrow searching for knowledge or wisdom. Well, whatever you want to call it, that's what that scarecrow was looking for. And it took quite a beating for the road home to be taken down, as some EGO was more durable than others. Both the Manticore and the road home were more easily damaged by that which attacked the mind, or white damage. The Manticore could regenerate as long as the road home was active. The road home could also disrupt EGO, but once the road home was taken down, the Manticore reverted into a harmless domestic cat. You know what? I might do a lore breakdown of this series at some point. But for now, let's focus on these two abnormalities. It appeared that in this twisted take of the Wizard of Oz, she was unable to go back home, so she went on an endless journey, walking together with her friends to a wonderful land of dreams. Yeah, her friends being the warm-hearted woodsman, the scarecrow seeking wisdom, and scaredy cats, where they headed for the Emerald City. Hang on, where's the dog? Was it killed by the scaredy cat in manticore form, or by the woodsman for its heart? Or was it due to a hostile reception of the munchkins? Possibly due to them attacking her and the dog armed with giant lollipops. Yeah, I think we know what guild they represented. Well, it might explain the lack of arms on her. Well, at least no arms that we can see. As for her behaviour, she called for her friend to come together for an adventure. It started after she was sound asleep in her farmhouse. And when she woke up, that was when the adventure began. To find a way home when making the yellow brick road. She repeated that she was asleep and it was scary. But an endless adventure began after that. When walking along that road, she told the manticore to skip home together, hoping for a wonderful land at the end of that road. A world of dreams, believing that long and winding roads could be navigated if she and the others stuck together. Seeing the manticore as a lion, hoping that she and her friends could go home, dancing forward along the path there. And when about to drop a farmhouse on the librarians, she believes that her opponents are in league with the wicked wizard. The mean lady wizard, hinting that the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wizard of Oz, in the source material, were mashed together. She told those she believed in league with the Wicked Wizard to go away, to let them go home in peace. As the Wicked Wizard in this case, wanted to take her friends away. Chesed recognized where they were was not home, but he told the others to keep calm, and upon defeating both of these abnormalities, his heart was aching due to their appearance. His assistants hadn't seen these abnormalities before, asking if they're related to the woodsman and the scarecrow. Yeah, these weren't in their facility, so they had no knowledge on how to suppress them. And upon taking them down, they wanted to go home if they could. they understood that there'd be a pain in the if they were in their facility, where it'd be similar to the Red Riding Hooded mercenary and the Big and Will Be Bad Wolf. Okay, it'd actually be worse than them, as with the Wizard of Oz set, there'd be 3 more chances of the Scaredy Cat to breach. As for the stage of the road home and Scaredy Cats, it's a large meadow with a yellow brick road in the middle that leads to the Emerald City at the end of it, seen in the distance. Upon Roland's next delivery of social science books, he arrived at the floor of social sciences and asked Chesed what he was up to. He was apparently picking out some coffee beans. Intensive work, isn't it? He, Angela, and the employees of Lobotomy Corporation were all picked out and ended up where they were, just like the guests were. Just said, Angela didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. Neither were you. As for the employees, they applied, seeing it as an easy way of getting into a wing. All they needed to get into L Corp was to be able to feel physical and emotional pain. Unfortunately, the attrition rate was higher than Nezhak after taking a load of enkephalin. Regardless, no matter the personal desires of an individual, society will pick out those that it wants and discards the rest. An invisible chain of oppression weighing down on everyone. Roland sees the rules that this chain of oppression thrusts upon them as necessary for people to live close to each other. And kill each other? He sees society will be even more messed up than it already is without these rules. Chesed doesn't question the necessity of rules. He questions why they need to be so extreme. What, like the ethics law that restricts how firearms are made, which makes sure that combat is as messy and painful as possible? Well, to the head, compassion is a dirty word, seeing as they can send a claw to kill someone guilty of tax evasion. The syndicates in the back streets, the fixer associations, the wings, all established on the premise of human sacrifice. Chesed, are you sure it's not based on the premise of insanity? Roland saw it as cat and mouse. The winner takes all. So don't be the mouse. While Roland saw no point in trying to wrap his head around the inevitable, Chesed was odd that he did try to do that. He then asked Roland if he saw that pain and loss, the kind that he suffered, as inevitable, as he talked about the city so plainly that the madness that occurred was what couldn't be helped. Was this due to indifference, turning away from the underlying unfairness of the city? Roland didn't argue with that, seeing them all being carried away by a gigantic wave. All he sees that he can do is surrender to the flow and float down the stream. Yeah, a stream consisting of diuretic. Chesed noticed that Roland was running away from his problems. He then told Roland that he came from a nest, which didn't surprise him. When he was Daniel, he was born into a wealthy family, envied by all. His future was guaranteed, and he was born smart. Roland understood him to be an elite prodigy. Everyone expected him to join Acorn and climb up to certainly a high position effortlessly. Yeah, to be honest, I think it's beneath him to be considered material for the head. The biggest scumbags in the city, worse even than the fingers. Now, Ian might have had some questionable ethics, but even his morality is less bent than theirs. In fact, theirs is completely broken. His older sister and his other siblings were snapped up by wings. Uh-oh. I hope that board member from U-Corp wasn't one of them. Otherwise, they're dead, after being turned into a puppet and then turned into a book. I'm guessing that none of the others were in Elcor. Now, while most people would shove a cattle prod up someone's and shock them in such a way that it would make them scream to the tune of Get Ready to Die by Andrew W.K., while dressing in a way that is totally devoid of any dress sense, in order to get into a wing. But for Chesed, that's an ordinary path. Something so mundane that he doesn't need to worry about that. He didn't get why most were so desperate to join what he considered to be a boring company. Roland was amazed by how great Daniel's family was. Well, that's who Chesed was, before all of that happened. That made him a brain in a robot's body, and then what he is at that point, when he's talking to Roland. All that changed when he stepped into the back streets, the last place that an elite would find himself, a place that would bring him only suffering and pain beyond all imagining, if he didn't get himself killed first. Yeah, Roland considered that quite rebellious for that spoiled young gent. Well, it would have been considered romantic if that was the case. But he was just the victim of his own bad timing. Roland guessed that he was kidnapped. Chesed agreed, but it wasn't by a syndicate, thug, or some mad person. It was Carmen and Kali, the last two that you'd expect to do so. Roland thought that the Red Mist herself had good reasons. When he realized what was going on, Daniel, I meant, as he was ambushed by them, the two were arguing with each other. Carmen was saying, "How could you not tell people apart based on their faces, Kali?" And she replied with, "Well, it's your fault for giving me such a bad description, Carmen." Yeah, there was quite a bit of back and forth. Thankfully, Carmen was a forgiving employer, and Kali was able to hold off her capacity for violence long enough to not kill the suspect. Why suspect, you may ask? Well, let's get to that. Daniel found this amusing. It was comedy to him. I didn't think that entertainment was that lacking, even for an elite. Roland thought that they had the wrong person, thinking that they were a couple of airheads. Roland, be thankful that Gabura wasn't there, as she'd kick pure for that, even in her comparatively weak state. Jessed confirmed this. Apparently, a con artist scammed Carmen out of her research fund. Callie mistook him for that perp. Well, even the Red Mist has her bad days. He expected to get some apologies and go back to the nest as if nothing happened. But Carmen asked him shamelessly to help her out, likely with her research. Apparently, a visibly rich person like him to stand next to her would help. He was confused and surprised, but he said yes. He was taken by her to an open space, and she gave a long speech. Roland guessed that she wasn't the typical mad person that mutters in the back streets, as if there was some zealous street preacher. Jessed told him that he was right, and as for what she was saying, it was about the disease of the mind, how everyone had it, and that she was recruiting help to find a cure for it. Roland didn't think much of that. Daniel noticed that her pride and confidence in her speech stood out, while most others, would walk past with apathetic disgust. She was certainly different from most. She had the eyes of one willing to carve a new path. Well, she certainly did that, even though she wasn't there physically at the end. He didn't know people like her existed until that day. She walked him home after that. On the way back, he saw and heard it for the first time. The hellish landscape that was the back streets, so different from the nest that he lived in. The back streets were full of people being crushed under an unseen authority's heel, while the nest inhabitants were being extorted with crippling taxes, and worse, for no reason that can be figured out. At home, it made him shiver from his sense of guilt, which Roland saw as half-baked, as Daniel could have just dismissed it as a bad day and went on as normal. Roland, a bad day was what turned a rich boy into a vigilante with a bat fetish. A bad day turned a colour fixer into a cybernetic gender-bent version of pre-Midgard Kratos. A bad day was also what could turn a human into a distortion. Daniel could have done that, disregarded it as a bad day, but he didn't want to. We also knew that he joined Carmen's team of researchers, on the condition that they installed a coffee machine in that lab, so that everyone could have some warm coffee. Roland thought that it was too simple, as too many steps were skipped at once. Daniel's family also had their concerns, basically going, "What the are you thinking, Mum? Throwing your life away for some research projects?" Well, that's more or less what they said, but he saw that as some small details. Daniel genuinely wanted to use his capabilities to help people, to make the world a better place. He meant what he said. Well, you and the others are still working on that. Roland asked if he was still sincere about that now, as Chess said. He was, and he wanted to change it right this time, if there is a next time. That's the problem, as what's to stop Angela from screwing you over again? Roland then told him not to expect the same peace of mind that he has, as his prosperous background was the reason why he could say that. A background that Roland didn't have. And having said that, he didn't think much of what Jess had just said. He then left the floor of social sciences, his business done there. For now. Next will be something from both sides of the law. Well, as close as you're going to get in this city. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!